Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to cover issue number 1 of the Uncanny Avengers, which was written by the talented Jonathan Hickman and Jerry Duggan. But before we dive into the story, I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoy this video, please leave a like and a comment to help the channel grow. Now this issue opens a few weeks before the Hellfire Gala with Dr. Stasis and MODOK entering into a dark room, for in the center of the room was a cryo chamber housing a mysterious man within. Now, the reason why the lights are out is because the person within the chamber has been asleep for a very long time and his eyes may not have adjusted yet. And as for if he will be useful to them, it is good to remember that a little deniability goes a long way. But just as Dr. Stasis was explaining this to him, he realized that their guest was awake. So Stasis goes on to tell him, the world has changed for the worse since he has been gone. But their goal is to make it better, and they want to enlist him in their cause. For America has gone downhill, and they're glad he is sitting down, for they have some terrible news for him. Which is, of course, the mutants have formed their own country. And as for who they are, he goes on to explain how they are humble servants of humanity, filling the void in law and order since S.H.I.E.L.D.'s demise. So with them filling the void, Stasis goes on to explain how the day is fast approaching when they will wipe the mutants off the face of the earth at their state function on the summer solstice. Because they won't rest until a new world order is cemented in mankind's image, and they could use a few good men to help accomplish their goals. So with their proposal out there, the mysterious man's hand came crashing out of the chamber. So with the new recruit ready to go, Dr. Stasis tells him that the world is in need of his power and he has a perfect uniform in mind for him, the uniform of Captain Krakoa. So following this unholy union, we transition over to the cover of the Daily Bugle with the mutant massacre front and center, for this imposter Captain Krakoa just did the unthinkable. Now just to add some context to the story, it has been a week since the false captain attacked Washington for all to see. And despite everyone eating it up, Ben Urich, the current owner of the Daily Bugle, wasn't buying it for a second. For the mutants have banded together and formed a nation, and one of the first things they did was sell medicines to treat diseases of the mind, but mysteriously the same medicines made to help turned out to be tainted. And if you take Orchis at their word, the mutants are to blame, and maybe they are true, or maybe they are not. Because Ben Urich still hasn't made his mind up yet, for he is fully aware that Captain Krakoa was once Cyclops. And given Ben's history with the hero, he couldn't imagine him carrying out this kind of attack. So the only option left to assume is this massacre was a false flag operation. But regardless of what he believes, the damage has already been done. And the fear of mutants is at an all-time high. And because the fear is at a fever pitch, Orchis is able to do as they please, which includes deporting the mutants to the middle of a war zone on Mars. Because as we all know, Arakko is currently going through a civil war that is claiming lives left and right. So with all that being said, Ben states that he knows one thing for sure. One way or another, there are a lot of people who need to face justice, and a lot of dead folks who need to be avenged. So when everything is done, its outcome will make for a big story, and luckily for him, he has a person on the inside. Now, on a side note, I would like to believe the inside person he is referring to is Firestar, given how she is Jean's sleeper agent on the inside. But as of right now nothing is confirmed, and this is just a speculation I have, that would fit nicely into the story. But anyway, getting back to the story, we pick up in an Orchis filtration center located in Kansas City, where they offer two options. The first one is to take Orchis's injection to remove their mutant gifts, and the other option is to be deported off-world. But just as the mutants were being herded like cattle in either direction, a single individual stopped in its tracks and told everyone behind it that in a moment anyone who wishes to run may do so, just as long as they remember not to return to their homes. So with that hooded individual relaying that information, an Orchis guard approached it with the intention of teaching the hooded person a lesson, but unfortunately for him, he was messing with the wrong one. Because in a blink of an eye, a sword is drawn, and a cut is made. And before he could make a sound, blood erupted from his throat all over his fellow guards. So with all hell breaking loose, the hooded individual is revealed to be Psylocke, and she states that if you are staying, you are fighting, because Orchis will not let this slide. Now for those who don't know, Psylocke was trained as an assassin and served as a great Krakoan captain before the mutant massacre. So of course, as you may have guessed, she never forgave herself for the fall of Krakoa regardless of it not being her fault. Now her mutant ability was a pair of psychic knives, but she rarely used it and instead opted for the more lethal tools. So with that broken down, we find out weeks after the attack, she survived by hiding by day, and at night she shared the darkness within her with the fascists who had nearly exterminated her people. She cut and hid, and was always long gone before the next Sentinels packing Iron Man's technology arrived. But see, she wasn't alone, for St. Croix aka Penance was her partner, and together, along with a small group of mutants who have been tactically trained, made it their mission to hit target by target. Because both Psylocke and Penance have accepted that they both were failed warriors who had decided to go out cutting as much as they could and were content to kill as many Orcus members as possible. So with precision and skill, she cut down soldier by soldier, killing all who stood before her. And one thing she made sure to do if she had a moment to spare, was to make sure the Orcus's soldiers felt the pain they had caused, by injecting the feeling of loss directly into their minds, for there were children on Krakoa. Now, in regards to the children on the island, it is implied that they were all killed, but due to a large number of mutants being teleported to the desert, I would like to believe they have survived. But anyway, as she cut down more and more people, her blades were stopped in their tracks by the shield of Captain America. Now, from Psylocke's perspective, she was not surprised that Cap potentially sided with the humans on this matter. But just because he stood in front of her, didn't mean she was going to run. So as she stood ready for battle, Captain America launched his shield past her head and directly into an Orcus soldier's face, and just like that, it proceeded to bounce around into several other people, effectively taking them out of the battle. So with Steve showing his colors, he goes on to explain how he fought a little fascism in his life, and it took him a couple of nights to get a bead on their location. So if he was able to do it, then Orcus would also be able to pull it off in time. So with that info shared, he lets them know that he would like to offer them positions on his new Avenger team. So with the offer out there, Penance entered his mind only to see it isn't a trap. But now, despite the offer being sincere, Psylocke still had her reservations on the matter, because she was sure he wouldn't approve of her methods. Because Orcus killed hundreds of thousands of mutants from her perspective, so it is only right for her to pay it forward. But to her surprise, the only thing Captain America replied with was for her to avenge them. So with that issue settled, both Deadpool and Quicksilver arrived on the scene as members of Steve Rogers' Unity team. And Quicksilver informs them that he ran most of the now freed mutants to the Canadian border while they were having their conversation. So after a brief exchange between Psylocke and Penance, they ultimately agree to join their team just as long as they are allowed to fight as they please. So with everyone in agreement, Cap informs them that there will be an anti-mutant rally in DC, so it is a high chance for Captain Krakoa to be there. So with that said, the team started to make their way through the woods as the Sentinels arrived on location. But during their retreat, we learn from Cap that Tony Stark is focusing on taking down the Sentinels because they are more of an engineering problem at the moment. So following Cap and the team escape, we jump over to Rogue doing flybys over Orcus's facilities in order to get information on how close they could get before alarms go off, which so happens to be around 200 meters. Now with the information gathered, Rogue proceeded toward the rendezvous point. Meanwhile, our perspective shifts aboard the Thunderbird, the X-Men's former jet, soaring above Krakoa's Pacific Island. And once on board the vessel, we see Captain Krakoa, accompanied by Blob and Wildside, which formed the new Brotherhood of Mutants. Now their purpose for being here was to seek out like-minded individuals to bolster their cause, which was prompted by the false captain's desire. So with that said, we soon discover that Captain Krakoa had been weaving a web of deception. And among his lies was the claim that he remained invisible to the Stark Sentinels patrolling over Krakoa. And the other lie was about his very identity, for he had convinced Blob that he was none other than Cyclops to secure his loyalty. So as the imposter captain crashed through the council chamber floor, he stood before the twins, aiming to recruit them into his mission. Now one thing to note is Sinister is nowhere to be found, which is a big deal given how everything went down during the Sins of Sinister event. And equally striking was the absence of Charles Xavier's interference, considering he is the guardian of the island. So getting back to the story, we find Captain's Unity Squad venturing into the sewers beneath New York, the same ones we encountered in X-Men issue number 25. And just like that comic, we see all parties converge at their designated meeting area. Now in this issue, we get to understand why Cap and his team left, and the reason they gave is because Quicksilver was able to find the location of the false captain, which prompted his team to seize the opportunity and cut the gathering short. So with no time to waste, Quicksilver proceeded to race each member, individually, to the battlefield to face off against the false captain and his New Mutant Liberation Front. For their mission is to find and acquire atomic weapons. So with the fight on, Psylocke quickly dodged Wildside, while Pinnace went straight for the false captain, but to no success. And as for Deadpool, the twins blew a hole clear through his stomach, but due to his amazing healing factor, he was unfazed. And as for Blob, he was misled on who he was following, for Rogue attempted to steer him in the right direction. So with everyone's hands full, Cap burst on the scene and quickly dispatched Wildside and dashed towards the false captain. Now one thing you have to understand about this Krakoan battlesuit is that it is designed to amplify the strength of ordinary non-combatants, giving them an edge during an extinction-level event. So whoever this new Captain Krakoa was, he was much stronger than an ordinary human, for he caught hold of Steve's shield and broke his arm with little effort. So with that said, this issue of Uncanny Avengers comes to an end. Now this opening issue was pretty much focusing on the Unity Squad perspective around the events of X-Men issue 25. But one thing that caught my attention was the person under the Krakoan battle armor, because the more I read it, the more I started to believe that this false Captain Krakoa could actually be Captain Hydra. Given the symbolism in the comic, it wouldn't be a far reach to assume it was him. So down in the comment section below, let me know what you think about this issue and what predictions you could have moving forward. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.